What's up, man? It's another wealthy day in the neighborhood. Thank you guys so much for choosing to be my wealthy neighbors, man. Welcome to another episode 4 actually of Wealth Talk TV, where we talk about, have candid conversations, my bad, have candid conversations about purpose, adversity, what legacy looks like, and what's our definition of wealth, what's the different definitions of wealth that's out there, man. Man, I'm welcome. Thank you. I'm excited, man. I'm really excited about today's episode. If anybody like truly knows me or ever had a conversation with me, you know that my purpose is to help rebuild fractured communities. That's what I'm passionate about. And not just the fractured community as far as the exterior space, but build the fractured community within, making sure that your financial wealth, your spiritual wealth, your physical wealth, your emotional wealth are all in alignment. Your soul wealth is all in alignment and congruent with the plan and the purpose that's for your life. So my personal purpose, I believe, is to help rebuild fractured communities. And today I have the most amazing guest coming on, Dan Klinkert, who's all about helping to rebuild fractured communities and how to help assist with the redevelopment of areas. So with that being the case, first of all, like, y'all don't know how juiced I am, for real, because that's all I want to do with my life, for real. All I want to do with my life is to help rebuild fractured communities. So with that being the case, Dan Klinkert is going to come on, give us some background information about his purpose, his adversity, his definition of legacy and wealth, as well as give us some ideas about things that we can do to help be a part of gentrification, as opposed to being in a space where it's like gentrification happened to you. You don't want to be in a space where gentrification happened to you. You want to be the reason, the purpose behind why changes came to your community. So take notes, put your good ears on, and let's get this wealth talk going. All right, I hope you guys enjoy this. Dan, can you hear me?
Yeah,
How are you?
good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. First of all, welcome to Wealth Talk TV, and thank you for being a guest today. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's amazing, man. So go ahead and tell people your name and what's your purpose.
Okay. Well, my name is Daniel Klinkert. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I relocated to the Northwest 3 years ago. Spent 18 months in Seattle, and I'm coming up on 18 months in Portland right now. But my professional background is a mix of social work and community development. So in the city of Detroit for 15 years, I worked for the public mental health system and worked, with the very underserved subset of the mental health population, the chronically mentally ill. I managed programs and did research, and am continuing that work through other iterations here in Portland. But one of my primary passions is architecture and urban design. So in 2011, I went back and got a second master's in urban planning, and now I'm, doing community development oriented work. I look at my approach kind of like community psychotherapist for the built environment. That's the approach that I take, and currently working in Old Town Portland. Really enjoy it. Really enjoy the people that I've met, like yourself, and just many other incredibly creative and fun people. We were starting to get a lot of things going before this unfortunate pandemic situation hit. Very frustrating for
Right.
me. My heart goes out to anybody who was directly impacted by COVID-19. But we were making a lot of progress on the creative community front and other projects that just were thrown an incredible wrench. But we will see. Who knows? Could end up creating new opportunities that we'll be able to leverage and bring something even better to Old Town. But that's a quick synopsis of me and who I am and the work that I do.
I appreciate that. That's a lot. Okay, so go back to the you said community psychotherapist.
Mm-hmm.
Or could you break that down or make it a little bit more plainer for someone who never heard that
Certainly.
before?
I think one of the reasons I use that term is because community development has become a little bit of a controversial issue with gentrification and but the unfortunate thing is the work is still important. There are a number of neighborhoods and communities that are struggling, and it's hard to bring improvement, without either the reality of gentrification or the perception of it. So that's really been my approach. Is not something I said, well, I'm going to try to be this, community psychotherapist. It's just, that's my background. I worked in that field for so long. It forced me to develop a certain perspective that I don't believe I could get rid of even if I wanted to. But the good thing is I'm looking at healing what's there. So think about if you're experiencing health issues and you go to the doctors, well, the doctor doesn't replace you with another person.
Right.
We can't fix you. You go away, and we're gonna replace your life with a new person. No, that's not how it goes. You get treatment for what you stay the same. Your core person remains the same. You get treated for whatever ails you, and that to me is the best, most equitable, fair, and kind of respectful approach to doing community development work is maintaining what is there and just helping people move forward and the neighborhood move forward. So I like to, describe my background and my work through that lens and definition. And it's like I said, true, because I couldn't change my approach, I think, even if I wanted to.
That's pretty amazing. Like, first of all, I'm thrilled that you even came on today because that's my purpose. My passion is to help rebuild fractured communities.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that that's kind of like a work that you're already doing, basically taking the space that's already available and putting in the work to help rebuild the businesses that are all there,
Mm-hmm.
rebuild the people that are already there. It's like it's 1,010% like has me high off of that. But so could you tell me what were some of the adversities that you experienced on the way to like getting to this point where you know that this is at exactly this is the lane that you're supposed to be in?
Okay, well, yeah, I would love to share that with you. So a huge aspect to my history that kind of guides my philosophy and perspective on life. I'm a recovering drug addict. I had a severe drug addiction in my late teens and early 20s and was very fortunate to recover. Got help through some very special people, and that's what led me into social work. Was my initial plan was to do addiction and mental health psychotherapy with juveniles, and because that was kind of the system I was in and
Right.
the situation I came from. And unfortunately, during that time, I'm again from Detroit and the state of Michigan. When I graduated, they cut the juvenile service system pretty significantly, took a lot of funding away from it.
Wow.
And it kind of derailed that plan. Most of the jobs were in adult mental health, so in needing to work and pay bills, pay back student loans, I took a job in adult mental health, and I found it incredibly rewarding, to really get to know people and for myself to go through a destigmatization process. And in my history, I've been around the streets and anything you can imagine, but I still really didn't understand severe mental illness. I didn't understand the person that, was behind that illness, because a lot of times the illness is what's up front and what you see. So it was really good for me to do that work. So I could see people struggling with these conditions on a human level, and then coming out here
Right.
and seeing the homelessness crisis, which everyone seems to have a different opinion about, which is
Right.
important, because that's one of the reasons we can't make an impact there. Myself, of course, I look a lot through the mental health and addiction lens, and I see it largely as a result of what people have known historically, that the mental health system has been gutted, is not accurately appropriately funded. We don't have the level of treatment, interventions, effective approaches that are needed. So we need to push funding the systems, push research, and do better to help those that struggle with mental health and addictive disorders. And while that may not be every single person experiencing houselessness, it's still a huge percentage. And I think with effective mental health and addiction treatment, the reality on the streets would be a lot different.
Definitely.
But yeah, that just, I've always looked for opportunities to bring that up, because I'm from the statistically poorest city in the U.S., if you will. And one thing I remind or bring to the attention of people on the West Coast is we don't have people living in the conditions that people are living in here. And as a human, as with my background, it really bothers me to see people with sleeping on concrete, with the hygiene issues. So right now I'm doing an exciting project in the neighborhood. U of O has been involved with it. It's called the Recovery Enhancing Environment Proposal, but we're looking at the built environment and coming up with ideas how to modify and augment the environment in a way that promotes recovery. There's a lot of neighborhoods where you see a lot of mental health and addictive disorders out in the open. Often those environments do more to make these conditions worse than they do to help people recover. So myself, along with some input from the community members and U of O, and we've had some other academics chime in. We're going to propose some changes to the Old Town landscape, so our houseless brothers and sisters have a better quality of life and are better helped to move forward, recover, hopefully fulfill their dreams. That's what I see out in the streets a lot of times, is just a lot of broken, shattered dreams. I know, again, with my service background, everybody has hopes, goals, aspirations, and it's hard to see people that are really far away from that. So I say that's help people. Let's look at everything from therapies to the environment, whichever ways the government can help.
Right. So on a community level, just when it comes down to us as individuals, what are some of the things that you can recommend that we do to help, minimize the mental health crises as well as the homeless population? Because Portland's not the only city that experience homelessness. So in other cities that are also fractured, as Old Town Portland is, how do you recommend that we go about making sure that we're taking care of those who are in need of assistance?
Well, it's a great question. I'm glad you bring that up, and that unfortunately is not a question that I see being asked. What can day-to-day people do to help impact the situation? So it's kind of hard for me to answer because I hadn't thought about it previously. But obviously, with politics, we all have a vote, and hopefully this becomes more of an election issue. I haven't been following politics as closely maybe as I should have here, but I'm not. I know homelessness has been a huge election year issue, for many cities, but I'm not really getting the sense or seeing that mental health care is really, kind of entered into that, the dialogue, the debates, taking, known positions on what, people that are running for offices are going to do. So I think members of the general public have the opportunity to make it more of a priority issue in, elected officials, platforms, campaigns, and then most importantly, the work they do after they get elected. I think doing little things can help quality of life. Any volunteer hours that anyone has available. I know often I encounter individuals who are looking for things to do, want something new, different. We'll definitely encourage people to volunteer, whether that's shelters, whether that's programs that serve individuals who experience mental illness. So volunteer hours can be a difference maker, especially if it ends up being a lot of people and a lot of hours. Because as we know, systems aren't adequately funded, and that reduces the power, the workforce power to deal effectively with finding solutions. So volunteering, advocacy. I am running an informal campaign here out of empathy and letting people, not for office, but a campaign that everyone is aware that Oregon has the lowest ranked mental health system in the United States, 50th out of 50. And again, I don't think that can be separated from the crisis in the streets. But and reality is people deserve better. Everyone deserves health. Your health is your wealth, is one of my favorite sayings. So we have to do better. So yeah, people volunteer, advocacy, make it known that state by state across the country, everybody has to do better, but some states really have to pick it up based on rankings, and where I currently live, the state of Oregon is one of them.
Right. Dope. So, oh man, that's amazing. So from working in the trying to get the environment right, trying to get basically when it comes down to like rebuilding a fractured community, if you could tell me like the steps that it takes to take a community from being basically in the deficiency to basically thriving, what would be the first steps or the steps that one would take?
That's the $1 million question. One of the exciting things about the field for me is there isn't really a textbook, a manual for it. Where I come from in Detroit, the community development industry is a pretty established industry because we've had long-term struggles, and so we have a number of agencies that are doing the work there, and an institutional knowledge base has been developed. But in being familiar with the work that goes on there, everyone is still throwing the kitchen sink at the problem, and we don't really have a lot of kind of replicable models or situations. We have case by case situations where communities have improved, but honestly and unfortunately, the thing that's changed communities the most, as far as, again, when you say better is a subjective term. So if you're talking about things like occupancy and incomes and all that, unfortunately, the tool that has been deployed most often is a gentrification tool. And while I guess you could look at it in some way, by some metrics, if you're just looking at median income and things like that, yeah, that's been changed. But I mean, look at the negative externalities of that. Look at the lives that have been uprooted by that. That's the main reason why I left the city of Detroit, because the places I was connected the most to were the ones that experienced the most rapid change as far as the people, the cultures there. I was kind of a downtown rat, and downtown is what primarily gentrified in the city of Detroit, downtown and north. So all the places, the venues, the people that I was connected to, just within 2 years, I became a stranger in places where I used to be the regular, and it was really kind of a disturbing thing to go through, and that's why I moved, because the place that I was connected to didn't exist anymore. So it's kind of like if someone has an infection in their hand and you cut their arm off, that's kind of as a treatment. That's what I look at as gentrification, and then we have to refine the treatment, get more like with a scalpel instead of an axe, and say we're gonna, address this. It could be, vacancy is something that, ends up, causing a lot of problems in communities because you don't have eyes on the street. A vacancy and blight send signals that if you live here, nobody cares about you. There's no rules, there's no order. So, dealing with vacancy and blight is definitely, something you can do that without changing the composition of the community. So, for example, in Old Town, we've done a number of pop-ups, art pop-ups. You were involved in one of them. The creative community is already there. It's already that's their home. Old Town is home to many creatives. So we're taking individuals who Old Town is already their place and just giving them a better venue with more exposure and trying to build momentum off that, bring foot traffic into the neighborhood. That's part of the cultures, whether it's streetwear or visual arts or these types of things. So getting more of what you have and more and better supported versions of that. So myself would love to help young entrepreneurs like yourself and others find permanent spaces in the neighborhood to fill up occupancy that way, instead of putting a Starbucks and a Salt and Straw in those places. Let's put something that is already a part of the community that deserves more support, better exposure. So that's my kitchen sink right now. That's what I'm trying to do, and whether that will work, it remains to be seen. But it's a puzzle. There's so many factors when you talk about a community, and a lot of times what ails communities isn't about what's inside of them, is about the external issues. So, for example, where I'm from, city of Detroit, notoriously most segregated city in the United States. Regionally, there was this, unfortunate segregation of any, demographic that was perceived to be, not what we want around the suburbs or whatever. Stuck in the city of Detroit, economically starved the city, no new businesses, moved businesses out of the city. And that is the unfortunate history there. So that's an example of how externally, the city was abused and dealt a very difficult deck of cards to play with. So I was a commissioner in Detroit for 3 years, planning commissioner, where we have the view of what do we do with all the vacant land, vacant spaces, industrial spaces that were ravaged by the unfortunate chain of events. And so there's opportunities there, no matter, always turning lemons into lemonade, finding those opportunities. You have vacancy, well, just like we have in Old Town, there's opportunities with that. And maybe what you'd call a stable neighborhood, or whatever you call a neighborhood that doesn't experience these types of challenges, they most likely aren't going to have vacant space there, as much vacant space, or space that building owners will let you use for free. So we have that there. We can do some really cool stuff with that. So turning lemons into lemonade, and identifying those types of opportunities. And right now, I would encourage anybody, again, interested in the arts, and it would have been shameful if I would have forgot to mention this. We have this great muraling movement going on in the neighborhood. And I'll be posting tomorrow a picture of all the murals that have gone up in the past 3 weeks on our Instagram at Old Town PDX. But we had a person fall out of the sky who saw all these boarded up storefronts, and I think we have the most boards in the city of Portland. So let's do some art on this, and started bringing in artists, getting supplies, doing it all grassroots, and we're up to around 10 or 12 murals in the neighborhood and counting. And so I'll be putting those pictures up. Amazing work. The artists that came out and for free did this beautiful pieces. So there you go. We have all kinds of boards that went up. That's unfortunate. That doesn't make a person feel good, feel comfortable, whether you're traveling through, living there, a business owner. What do we do with that? We put beautiful art that it's so well done. We want to save it after the boards come down. And hopefully we'll be doing a pop-up that shows all of these, 8x4 window board murals. Check those out. Anybody who's watching, check out at Old Town PDX. And there's a good, example of grassroots community development responding to, and this is, a lot of community development is dealing with ongoing issues. This was kind of an abrupt, immediate type of thing that evolved, but kind of same thing, turning an problem into an opportunity.
Right. That's pretty amazing. And as far as I will say that as far as I'm concerned, what I have considered to be one of the most effective ways when it comes down to rebuilding fractured communities is implementing more art into the area. So how exactly is it that one can go about painting murals or positioning murals throughout the city in a way to kind of create a more of a sense of culture in those cities that are not really big or heavy within the art scene?
Mhm. Well, I found some great recent examples of that, and so to backtrack and bring up again the recovery enhancing environment project we're doing. So we already know one of our recommendations is going to be to put up as many inspiring and uplifting murals we can in the neighborhood. So we still have a number of blank wall spaces on building exteriors that are begging for murals. And so part of our recovery strategy is, what kind of messages can we transmit through murals that, may motivate or inspire that person to make good decisions for that day, whether it's avoid getting high or a conflict or whatever. I believe there are opportunities through art to do that. I know the city of Philadelphia, through doing a literature review for this project, they've been a leader in using murals for public health purposes. I've just got into the literature review, so I'm speaking as a novice, and it's very fascinating for me as a psychotherapist. Even though I'm not doing a lot of direct work right now, I still keep my license active and all that. But I work a lot in what's called the medical model, meaning you go to a clinic and you sit down for an hour for one-on-one or group psychotherapy. Is all a narrative, is all conversational. But to look at things like greening and murals and other installations and the potential psychotherapeutic benefit that can be gained by that, it's been very exciting for me to dive into. Maybe at some point in the future, if I come back, I can speak to it more in depthly because it's new. But since it's pertinent to the question you asked, and there's a lot of literature online regarding what the city of Philadelphia has done, and I've just recently reviewed it, and they've been a leader, and other cities have wanted to replicate what they do. So as far as murals, that's one way. Your question was as general about art.
Right, right, right. But before you do answer that question, could you explain to me what greening is?
Greening.
Yes.
So that is, again, introducing plant life, vegetation. So when I first went to Old Town to pursue the contract that I have for community development work, I was still new to Portland. I didn't know anything about Old Town then.
Right.
And this is just a little over a year ago. And just walking through the neighborhood, it struck me how concrete it was. There's no lawns. There's very few bushes.
Right.
In the neighborhood, we have the Lansu Chinese Garden, which is a phenomenal space. I mean, I walk through almost every day to see what the flowers are doing and get photos. But that's a private garden; it's not out in the open.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have a neighborhood park per se. We don't have a green space. We have the waterfront's a part of our neighborhood there, where the cherry blossoms are, which is a great beautiful amenity, the Japanese American Historical Plaza. You can't beat it when the cherry blossoms are blooming. But as far as like a neighborhood park, that doesn't exist there, and literally just it's the concrete jungle. So how do we soften that up? And the really sad thing is we have people that's their living room, bedroom. So many people that are sleeping outside there with this heavily concrete, and that affects temperatures. Temperatures can be higher. You don't get that stimulation from greenery. I come from what many say is an industrial wasteland, and now I live close to Washington Park, where I walk my dog frequently at the Test Garden. And I know just the different colors of flowers and the greenery, it does so much to change your mood. So, and I think that's just kind of part of how we're wired as human beings. We get oxygen and food from wherever there's greenery and plant life. So I think, we have this inherent kind of biological wiring where we get a little high off greenery, if you will.
Right,
I think where
right,
you would really notice that is when you've been deprived of greenery for a long time, and then you get exposed to it and you see what it is. And for me, I think, especially creatively, being around, all these great gardens. And I know I brought up some of the unfortunate issues here in Portland, but I mean, it's absolutely naturally beautiful,
right,
gorgeous city this spring. A lot of us have, the only thing we've been able to do is go for walks and
right,
go out and get
right.
fresh air. And just the plant life, the springtime here is incredible. So I'd like
Yeah,
to bring more of that beautiful springtime to Old Town, where
right.
we have, unfortunately, a marginalized population there that doesn't get to walk through the Rose Garden every day. But how can we, incorporate this more into the landscape? And it's experimental.
Right.
So my hope is we can do a few things, do some murals, and the greening may include, ivy on the buildings, hanging plants. I know in spending time in Seattle, Pioneer Square does a good job of hanging
Hmm.
up plants all around there. And there's another area where it's kind of the same. I don't know if the idea for that came out of Pioneer. What's it? Pioneer Square.
Pioneer
Yeah,
Place.
yeah,
Oh, Pioneer
yeah.
Place. Yeah.
The lack of lawns and ground level greenery prompted people to do that. But it's experimental. So in trying to work as closely with U of O on this as I can, I would love to research that. So we
Right.
implement these things, and then we see, a year, 2, 5 years down the line, what impact it has. And there's certain metrics you can look at, whether it's crime, hospitalizations, incidents. You can look at databases to see if that has really, just helped people
Right.
relax and enjoy what's around them instead of maybe,
Yeah.
being, naturally what one would expect, angry or irritable, because
Right.
again, you're sleeping outside in a concrete,
Right.
overly concrete area. So,
And
um,
it's pretty difficult for me personally to be upset or angry when you're saying something beautiful grow. It's just like it's an interruption of thoughts because you can walk down the street being your own thoughts and then see something amazing, and it's like wow, that's really gorgeous. So the awesome. Thank you for explaining that to me. So as far as the art portion, like how do we implement that? What were you saying?
well, yeah, again, we're kind of, I'm pushing for something very experimental, and it will be kind of a little bit impromptu, I think. I mean, there's some funding sources available to do murals. One, great bit of timing is that now we've had muralists and coordinators come into our neighborhood with, muraling the boards, and, I'm already trying to recruit them for this project to help get things done on implementing more murals in the neighborhood. But then you have opportunities for installations too. We see different statues and whatnot around town, and there I have more literature review to do, and then this is something that I hope will grow and grow with time, that more people will come into kind of a movement to make different things happen relative to what their interests and passions are. But again, like this is what we did in December, activating a vacant space with a day long pop up, whether it's creatively made retail goods to art pieces. You get a building active and lit up for a day, and it or ideally longer, it changes the chemistry, changes the mood of everything around it. I know from growing up around, so much vacancy that, I mean, it's an energy sucker, so, again, with so many great creatives here in Portland looking to showcase their work, it's never been hard. The few times we've done it, it has not been hard to do day-long pop-up galleries. You came to the one that I was really proud of how it came together in the big, industrial space. And but one day every 3 months, that's not going to have a huge impact. So we're looking to, that's the foundation, and we'd love to build up our capacity to pop up a space for 2 weeks or a month. I've tried to do that through different funders and made progress as far as understanding when funds will be available and how to meet the criteria. But yeah, just kind of the 1 day pop up, quarterly. That's the beginning. Ideally, we'd be looking at longer term pop up scenarios, and but you got to start somewhere and then build capacity for that. But all
Right.
that, from the artwork to the patrons, and inviting everybody into the space, no matter who they are or where they come from, to enjoy the art. I think if you do that regularly on a larger scale, mixed with some other things,
Right.
have an impact to again heal the fractured community, as you say.
Dope, dope, dope. That's amazing, man. Like, oh, you've given me a lot to think about when it comes down to just the development of areas. Because, like, with one of the cities that I'm most passionate about is Birmingham, Alabama. Um, one of the I want to say the west side of Birmingham, as well as other parts, North Birmingham, East Birmingham. There are parts in the area where you have a lot of empty houses, a lot of vacant spaces, and it really looks bad on the community, but it's so much value in the community. A lot of people don't really pay attention to the value of the area because it doesn't look good. But to be in a space where, like as you said, just on a one-on-one level, even when it comes down to a person's own personal house, making a garden or building some type of greenery within the community, it revitalizes the area. Having artists to see particular spaces and want to have a conversation with the owner to just give that building, that place, a facelift, and it just causes things to grow, organically. So that's really, really awesome. So let me see what else did I want to ask you. So when it comes down to getting funding to actually make these things happen, uh, what do you advise to do? Like, do you communicate with grant writers? Do you try to find community coordinators? Uh, what would be one's first step?
Well, yeah. I mean, for me, I write all the grants that I submit. That again, part of my social work background. I did a
Right.
lot of grant writing in my career. If you're able to hire somebody to do that or find somebody to do it pro bono, great. But I don't think that it's people feel that grant writing or obtaining grants is a bit more mysterious than it really is. In
Mm.
reality, most funders ask the direct questions of what they want. So it's not like you're submitting something blank, like you have to guess, what their priorities are. They make those known right off the bat. And a lot of grants are more forms that you fill out. But still, grants, they're competitive.
Right.
Everyone is going after the same pot, and not everybody ends up getting funded. So you want to make the best case you possibly can. Obviously, in being 100% honest and forthright, but still not leaving out any aspect of the challenge you face, and then the potential impact that your program or intervention or idea is going to have. So I mean, I think anybody who is a decent writer, can definitely write successful grants, and a lot of it is doing the research on your community. So if you're writing grants for a community that's economically struggling, you'll definitely want to emphasize, not only emphasize that, but go on to the U.S. Census site. Anybody can get census data, for example, and we're gonna now have new data with it being 2020. Referencing numbers, having actual numbers, actual proof, very important. I would encourage anyone, don't feel just because you don't have a staff together or the resources to bring so-called professionals in. I don't want that to dissuade you. A lot of funders prefer or require that you're a 501c3. For people who may not have that going on, you can get what's called a fiscal sponsor, a 501c3 to sponsor you. So that's where kind of making a network in a field and with the issue you're passionate about is so important. So like I said, volunteer work is something people can do. So if you, let's say you have a passion and a drive to, evolve whatever type of art you're in and do it on a community level. Well, definitely you want to start networking, and volunteering is a good way to meet people in the organizations, going to events, and being the genuine you and seeing who you click and connect with. And, that can lead to a lot of other opportunities to collaborate, have an organization say, well, I'm great with you. I'm okay with you writing this grant for the project you want to do. And, so some people will work with you like that. And then if you're really, really passionate and you want a formal organization, then I would just do the paperwork to set up an organization and get 501c3 status through the IRS. That can be a little bit of a long and cumbersome process, but it's not impossible. Anybody who really wants to do it can do it. And then you're eligible for a number of different types of funding sources. But yeah, unfortunately, we got to talk about money with it. It's no matter what you want to do, helping people.
Right. It costs regardless.
Societal issues. Right. Got to go back to the unfortunate evils of money.
Right. I mean,
that's what it costs. Is even, and then I know as a social worker, what I used to say is, I'm definitely passionate about helping people, and I've made personal sacrifices to do that, but I still have to pay rent, still have to buy food. I don't get a discount at the grocery store for being a social worker. So
yeah, which you guys really should.
And it's complicated. I mean,
right.
You look at where a lot of our problems are. I mean, it's big league stuff. Unfortunately, we've let problems evolve. Whether it's in some of the places we're familiar with. Maybe intergenerational poverty, problems that, that were in place, 60, 70 years ago that still haven't been solved, things that have to do with discrimination, marginalization, so much historical prejudice is impacting people severely in the present day. I saw that as a commissioner as far as how the housing crisis went and who was able to keep their homes and who wasn't. And a lot of it had to do with, who your family was and, ultimately what your racial and ethnic background was, because you had those resources to draw on to save yourself. And the people that didn't have that lost their homes at a much, higher, steeper rate. So the point I'm getting at is these are, the community, whether you say community, inner city, marginalized, you have what's going on today, and then you have the historical factors that make it so severe and so challenging that it does require, a team, a group of persons who have a high level of skill and acumen and ability to drive change. And so, we need to fund those initiatives, pay those people, get the best out of those people. But so many of these problems are humanitarian. They take a human toll, and they need to be more of a priority, because of that, because of the human element.
Right. That's amazing. So when it comes down to like the coronavirus, because right now they're saying that we're in kind of like a recession because of the current circumstances. So a lot of businesses are about to close. A lot of people are unemployed at this time. What exactly, what do you see as the game plan to help just create a revitalization within the community?
You got the Len Wealth with the $1 million questions today. Again, my specialty within planning, even though I'm very much into architecture, especially historic architecture, it's been economic development. That was my major. Again, I talk about my hometown ad nauseum, but being from Detroit, it's like everybody's an economic development person there, because the conversation throughout my whole life is how do you fix Detroit economically? And I've lived through many unfortunate economic implosions. Being in that part of the country, the economic reality is a lot different. And I know, again, where you're from, there's a lot of really just unfortunate, long-term struggles. But the thing with this situation is we're in totally uncharted waters. This is so unprecedented. It's not like a normal recession or shock to the economic system. Because in most recessions, usually there's something structurally wrong with the economy. Like, for example, in the '09 housing market crash, you had just so many bad mortgages, and I'm not an expert on that crash, but we had structural issues with finance and the economy, and that was what was behind that. And here we have a situation where, I mean, the economy can never be good enough. I guess there's always people that are left out, and there's always problems to solve. But relative to history, recent history, we're in a very strong run economically. And then this came and hit, and again, it's not about kind of our system or numbers. It's about a pandemic and a forced shutdown. So yeah, the first thing I have to emphasize is we're in totally uncharted waters. I'll be honest, I have very serious concerns about the city of Portland. And this is I think, again, to complement the city, is a special place of small businesses. When you think of the retailers and the food amenities, so many people come here to shop and eat and take in the nature. Tourism is extremely important to Portland. So when I said those three things, retail, food and drink, and tourism, those are the three areas that are most significantly impacted by coronavirus, because we know for the short term there's going to be less travel. There's all kinds of restrictions on that, and then a lot of their disposable income has been taken away, so people aren't going to have the money to travel. Portland's going to be hurt by that. So much of the economy and employment here is based around a retail and food and drink, and that's really what makes Portland so special. We have this sea. It's almost like a never-ending amount of restaurants, and shops, and the individuals and the products, and it's so great that people travel from far and wide to come experience this. And because of social distancing and, again, incomes, I think it's going to be harder for Portland to recover than our major city to the north, Seattle, who's home to Microsoft and Amazon. I mean, we know that one of what most people say, people that really are into like the genuine goods and supporting brick and mortar aren't happy about how well Amazon has done during the coronavirus. People are shopping online and getting their needs met through that. But Seattle, because they have that base economy, I don't feel everybody's gonna be hurt by it, but I think their road to recovery is gonna be a lot easier than Portland, as this is really just ravaging small businesses. So, the answer, again, million dollar question. My hope is that all of it we can find a way to help it remain intact, and that's gonna require subsidies. Is going to require a government, primarily the federal government, saying that a business should not lose, or a business owner should not lose everything they have because of coronavirus, something that's outside of their control. And, capitalist system, is supposed to be all about, people taking risks, and then, if someone makes a bad decision about a business, then they lose the business, and that's one thing. But to have, potentially thousands of people lose their business over something they can't control, that even in what quote unquote capitalist, I mean, we can't let that happen. I hope we see major subsidies that allow people to survive, allow businesses to survive, and get on solid ground. And then, thing about owning a business, you have to be on point. You have to manage your affairs, and if you don't, there's consequences. But people deserve, no matter what the economic structure is, deserve to have that chance to not be taken out by things that are outside of their control. So I don't have an answer. All I have is a hope that,
Right.
they are helped in that type of way.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Um, I just kind of like off the record, do you see the majority of, well, I do know a majority of businesses are online at this time,
Mhm.
but what exactly do you see that one could do to, I guess, make themselves stand out from others in a sea of oversaturated communities?
Uh, mm, so tough. Well, right now we have some restrictions opening up, so we're in a new reality. The retail, for example, and I know that's part of how we connected, and that's been a really. I'm trying not to go off on too many tangents here, although
Mm.
that's kind of my style. But retail, it's been so fun to do work with retailers here because where I'm from, you can't do it like you can do it here. There's
Right.
there's great opportunities in Portland with no customer sales tax and some of these things I
Yeah.
mentioned that are unfortunately maybe temporarily changing, like tourism and the city being a regional magnet. But with people starting to come out of the house now, I feel if you're just able to, yeah, like you said, get noticed in any type of way. So I noticed that the businesses in Old Town have opened up. They've, I think had a decent amount of foot traffic come through relative to how thin it is out in the streets. So we only have maybe 30. I don't believe even half of the businesses are open, but those that are, I think are benefiting at least by cutting their losses, if not turning a profit. I get another $1 million question. I mean, this is going to make everybody evolve and up their game.
Right.
I guess that'd be the only takeaway or thought that I have is you're going to have to up your game
Right.
and as a call to action, because I know if you're passionate about what you do, your ceiling is high and
Right.
the potential for you to up your game is there.
Right.
It just takes that drive and a few good ideas. So, and might as well take, again, time to take risks when you're in the unknown.
Right.
You might as well, when during normal times, then you can kind of, you see what's working for other people and you can replicate that. That's not taking risks.
Right.
Now we're in an era where the book hasn't been written. How do you
Right.
succeed as an entrepreneur or creative post Corona?
Right.
Nobody knows, so it's kind of, I guess that's how I look at it. Is now is a
Gotta
good
be
time to. No
innovative.
one will fault you for taking risks. No one
Right.
will call you a fool because they don't know, any better themselves. And what you do may work. A lot of times when we're thinking about launching a new idea or taking a risk, we're consumed about, all the things we can think about to where will make us believe it's not going to work. Well, I would say throw those thoughts to the side and just maybe go with your intuition and
Try it
and
out.
see, and you can learn either or. If it doesn't work out, if it works out, great, it'll work. Anything that works now will work during the good times. So
Right.
you can build up that kind of strategy base. But if it doesn't, then you just evolve the idea or go to plan B. But
Right.
try, take risks, and it rises to the occasion. And I think anybody who succeeds, I know this because I've had a couple situations like this in my life. When you rise up to a challenge and prove the doubters, haters wrong, and end up succeeding with something that others couldn't do or others thought were crazy, there's no better feeling in the world than that. When you're that
Right.
person who pulls off the difficult stunt, the difficult situation. So here's the opportunity. Here's the opportunity to really build your confidence and pride, because if you make it through this and you succeed through this, you're capable of doing anything. So and for anybody who needs a message like that, I hope to see you. I hope to see you succeed.
I appreciate that. We appreciate that. Awesome. So I won't hold you any longer. Just two more questions.
Okay.
What does your legacy work look like for you? Like when you're done, what does your legacy look like?
Hmm. That's a great question. I'm big about the built environment. So, when I think of like the recovery project, like I hope I can be involved in, here in Portland and creating, some lasting pieces, whether it's murals, whether, I can contribute to anything architecturally. Again, I grew up kind of in a very old city and enamored by the historic architecture and these, architects and creators that made these places kind of they live on through their work. So I would love to do that. The only thing I have close to that as a commissioner, I took on a very powerful entity in the city of Detroit, and I was able to save a historic hotel downtown that was very architecturally well done. And for those who may not understand or think, preservation is a big deal. One, I'll just say a couple things. One is beautiful historic buildings. One cannot be built again. I mean, the materials, the manpower, even the skills that were employed to build a lot of these places, we can't replicate it today. We can't do it again today. Another important thing to know about preservation is it's the greenest form of building development. So building new buildings is very harsh on the environment through extracting materials in the construction process, and preservation is greener. And again, we know that on a small scale, you have this great movement of repurposing old clothes and all that, and saving, the resale is another great aspect to the Portland retail environment. So preservation is green, whether it's a sweatshirt, whether it's a building. So I have that one little thing in Detroit, but would love to build something new, design something. I don't know if I want to go get a third degree in architecture, but I'll have to try to contribute from where my education and abilities are here now. But leaving something that inspires somebody's future generation, maybe a struggling young person like I was, and just got into something. For me, architecture was big, and that would be a great legacy for me.
That's amazing. And what's your definition of wealth?
Wealth, I've been really impressed with your brand and your name and your emphasis on that word. And there's definitely, I may not provide the best articulation, but there's definitely a difference between being rich and being wealthy, having fast money. But yeah, what the wealth is, I would love it. You got to tell me your definition after I struggle to answer this. But I think more comprehensive is a healthier form of having. Maybe I'll run with that. Is a healthier form of having things. It's not necessarily about the big bank account. It's about ownership, is about equity, and then being able to benefit for a long period of time off of equity. I know, for example, being a difference between being a homeowner and a renter. When you own the home, the benefits of that, what you get when you leave. When I left my home, I got a nice check. When I leave my apartment, I'm just going to get a small security deposit. So, yeah. Living in a $4,000 apartment downtown, or, having maybe a less glamorous, house a little further away, with a $1,500 mortgage that, I'm not going to, be empty pocketbook when I leave, or I can do more with that property because I own it. Ownership, equity, and being taken care of by reciprocal relationship, taking care of the world and the world taking care of you through relationships, through what those relationships do as far as experiences and quality of life. Thinking out loud here. I'm thinking out loud. You didn't give me the questions ahead of time, but I would say quality of life. Wealth is there. I thought my way to an answer. A great quality of life. What is your definition of wealth? Tell me. I've been wanting to know.
My definition of wealth is, as my brand states, to create something that outlives you, leave a legacy, leave an inheritance for your successors. And not just when it comes down to the financial portion of things, but even if it requires you writing down a basically your chapter of what you experienced in your life during your period of time of being here and how you overcame those specific situations. As you stated before, you were previously addicted to drugs, but you found your remedy or your way to be able to come out of those things. So being able to bookmark that and produce it and give it to the world so that other people know how to be able to get the best out of their adversity is what I really want to do. So that's the foundational portion of my definition of wealth.
Mm. That's,
And
that's awesome.
my intent with this thing though is to, as I stated before, to help rebuild fractured communities, to be in a space where I do have ownership, and we as a community have ownership and say so within politics about what happens to us. You know, I find myself this year more than any other year, any other previous year of living, just really trying to figure out what's important to me when it comes down to my community and what exactly I want to see implemented and what I want to see happen. And then, you know, after making a list of those things that I find important, then trying to find a candidate that backs that, as opposed to them telling me what they're interested in giving me. Me being in a position where I know what I want, and if they line up with the things that I want, then I'll be okay to support this particular individual. But as opposed to what's going on now, it's like, oh, we'll give you this or we'll give you that, and it sounds appealing until you don't realize what's on your grocery list, what you actually need in your household.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, beautiful, beautiful concept. And with, you know, whether it's art, clothing, music, or record stores, you know, I think with, again, you're big into products and stores. And while, you know, some may just look at like clothing as materialistic, one thing, you know, I can say as a planner, and especially what we have going on in Old Town is so many of these, you know, clothing places, they're what we call the third place in society, meaning, you know, we have work, we have home, and then we have the places where we go mix it up together, and we find like-minded people, and you grow a culture, and so much of what you do, and whether it's laundry or produce, or the great retailers in Portland, they're creating a third place for so many people through their events and just bringing people into the store. I go to these places and talk to the owners for hours, and they become friends, and so you with clothing, even material type things, you know, that's one element of what gets offered, and creating a third place of carving out, you know, unique spaces to shop and hang out. So when are you gonna get a store? When are we gonna get the wealth store in Old Town?
A wealth store. Well, if I be honest with you, I'm looking more so to do like I don't want it to just be a store. I want it to be like a co-working space. Okay. You have the option to purchase clothes, but I would like to create a hub, a space for other entrepreneurs to be able to grow and develop in that area and incubate their business.
Well, even better.
Yeah.
I hope we can. I know you're a worldly individual, and who knows where may end up being a lot of places, centers, or whatever term you use. But hope we can get one in Old Town.
I would love to have one in Old Town. I think that might be within my top 5 areas of having a space.
Oh, that's good to hear. We're in the running, and we'll do what we need to do to seal the deal.
I appreciate that. Well, Dan, I greatly appreciate you for showing up today and just giving so much insightful information on how we can just, as on a human level, build and create the world that we want to see. And we're definitely going to have to do this again.
I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciate you reaching out. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to give you a call right after this, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
You guys have a wealthy day.